Welcome to the Robcast. This is a show about Oakville, the people that live, work, and do business here. We're honored today to have our guest. He is the Town and Regional Councillor of Ward 1. This is Sean O'Mara. You're not going to want to miss this.
It's the Robcast Podcast. He's with you for the next hour or 20 minutes. Who knows? Let's see how it goes.
The Robcast is brought to you by Oakville's own Fisher Private Wealth Management of RBC Dominion Securities and Angus Fraser Private Banker with RBC Private Banking Oakville.
Here he is. It's Rob Raham.
Sean, thanks so much for being here today.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Let's get into it. So, explain to me, I know you've been here for a long time in Oakville. You weren't born here, but you've been here for a long time. Explain to me your journey that led you to getting into, your life in politics.
Oh my gosh. Well, so like every Oakville grad here, you aspire to do post-secondary education, went to University of Guelph.
Yeah.
Went to Northern Ireland and did a master's degree in Queen's at Belfast there. Came back, did 4 years of my PhD at Queen's and University, and then, of course, couldn't find a job at the time.
A lot of schooling.
Met my wife, who was from Toronto, and she's a veterinarian, so she works in town here. And then, of course, I'm fitting ski boots for an incredible Canadian icon, Corbett Sports.
Spears,
they were great all throughout my university, always had work for me to offset. So I'm sitting there with all this education, can't get a job anywhere, and I marched into the MPP's office at the time, who was Kevin Flynn, and I said, I've got a problem with you guys. I've got a lot of education, and nobody is even giving me an interview, and I think I've got a lot to give. And he said, well, I'll hire you.
Just like that.
There was a process to it, right?
But you literally just marched
in. I wanted a meeting, and I was mad, and I was upset, and he said, hey, you're right, man.
I got a lot of problems with you people.
Yeah, that's it, right? It's Festivus for the rest of us sort of thing, right? And then, started to learn about the community in a public service way, and worked at Queen's Park for a while, had a foray out at Tim Hortons head office, doing a lot of their GR work and stuff like that, and the big axe came down a number of years ago and was kind of sort of back at Queen's Park for a bit. And I had my second child at the time and was 7 in the morning. I was on the train and coming back at 7 at night and wasn't seeing my kid. And I was like, this isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, the grind.
Yeah, municipal elections were coming that fall, and I made a decision, well, with my wife's blessing.
Yeah, that's a family decision.
Yeah, it is. And just said, I'm going to run. And she said, well, I got your back. And that was 2014. And here we are 10 years later.
So, I mean, you grew up kind of close to the Bronte area. I mean, is that still your ward, is where you grew up? Why that area? Is that where you live?
Yeah, I live now. I live right behind what was the old Bronte Village Mall, and we had our own issues at the time with fencing up and take down that fence and these sorts of issues. I live just 2 streets north of Lakeshore there now, but I grew up at 4th Line in Lakeshore, and when I was growing up, my mom had 2 rules when, the kids out on bikes, and you don't go to Kerr Street and you don't go to Bronte, okay? You stay away from those 2 areas. And it's funny to look back now to see how things have evolved.
I was told the same thing.
You stay out of that. That's where you.
Kerr Street Posse.
The Kerr Street Posse and the Bronte Boys, right? Yeah. That's where you were. So we, that was the rule, right? Your bikes could go. Now, if you wanted to go downtown Oakville, which were okay, you had to cycle real quick past Kerr Street and get up the slope and go to the bridge, and then you were okay. So it's funny how things have evolved. But yeah, I represent the area from Burl Oak to 3rd Line all the way up to the QE, and then the sliver that goes up on the west side of Bronte Road, the old Richview Golf Course and Bronte Creek area up there now.
Yep. So let me ask you, I mean, obviously this Midtown thing has become a hot button issue in Oakville. There was a meeting on May 6th, and, I don't want to I want you to kind of walk through what your experience with that meeting and kind of what has happened since then.
Yeah, well, so the Midtown thing is sort of it's a culmination of the growth issues we have and of housing and how that goes. And yeah, I mean, no, it's just on May 6th, it was the HAF application, Housing Accelerator Fund application. And, we just got some information kind of piecemeal a bit from senior leadership and from the mayor, and we were going through the discussion about whether to allow 4 units as of right. Right now, you're allowed 3, so 4 units as of right, and a special study area around Sheridan College to allow up to 4 stories.
Right, College Park.
Yeah, College Park area, and it was a substantial amount the federal government was looking at, $25 million to $36 million.
Right, and they already started to invest, right? They got the wheels going, right?
Well, we were as far as I know, we were in the process of negotiating an agreement. Council had had said move forward with it, but there were always going to be two sticky issues. It was the 4 units as of right and the 4 stories around the Sheridan College area. So on May 6th was the decision day to decide whether we do the 4 units and 4 stories. And now just at the end of the meeting, we received some information. I asked for clarification and I couldn't get it. So I was a little puzzled because I've spent a lot of time at all levels of government, and I found it a little odd that a non-disclosure agreement would be signed with one individual on council, and other members of council would not be privy to that information. I get there's always with Midtown, there's stuff council knows and public doesn't know, and we're bound by that. So I filed a freedom of information from the federal ministry and spoke to the minister himself personally. He said at no point would I ever have a mayor sign an NDA. So it's a process about trying to have all the information and make sure everybody on council who makes a decision does it with all the information, and that there's openness and transparency in how we're making these decisions. So we had found out that the town of Oakville had signed the agreement already, had received money from the federal government before we made those decisions, and but
you weren't aware of that before.
We weren't aware of that. Yeah, I mean, I was not aware that we had an executed agreement. I knew we were working towards it. But that meeting was where we make the decision. We were to become the first municipality to renege on a federal agreement.
Big article about it, right?
And were there penalties? Were there
pay it back?
So so there was a lot of information that sort of was there that I think we should have been privy to, and it just ended up. We're going to move on from this. And again, it's about the process. But we ended up sort of in a place where the Integrity Commissioner said, your code of conduct really kind of is not good. And it doesn't have basic necessities like you can't mislead people. You have to be honest. And these things, which you think would be kind of ground zero for. But because that wording wasn't in there, last council meeting I passed, we had a motion passed that I brought forward that council update, or that staff update that code of conduct to include what should be the norm, right? Openness, transparency, and honesty. So,
were there other like town wards or councillors that kind of felt the same way with you? Was it?
I won't speak for other councillors. I mean, I know I've had many conversations with people who are a little surprised that information wasn't available to us. And the other thing that was surprising, and this happens all the time, staff will stand up and say, maybe we can just go into closed session and just all get on the same page here. And staff didn't do that. So that was a little disappointing as well, because we rely on staff to give us that professional advice and stuff. So anyway, it's something I think we're going to clear the decks on. We're going to get a stronger code of conduct. We're going to understand what our responsibilities are, not just to the public and to the people we represent, but to our council colleagues when we're bringing information forward.
I mean, admittedly, like, if we're seeing and listening to you speak here, like, if there's a kind of a lack of transparency between the mayor and his council, then what's the end user, the residents? Like, so I think that's what really has to be addressed. You got to get that clear line of communication.
Well, there does, and I can't tell you how many times residents come up to me and say, "Hey, I heard this is happening." So, well, that's news to me. Right? Because I didn't know. And I mean, it's a complex organization. You can't be expected to have your finger on the pulse of everything. But on these important things, we've got to sort of stay aligned on.
Yeah. So, Sean, like, I guess just more of an update for our watchers out there. Obviously, the Midtown issue is becoming a hot topic. And, there's associations, residential associations getting involved. We Love Oakville's getting involved. We've had them on the show. Where are we just kind of still in limbo waiting for the TOC kind of come back? Where are we at with it right now?
Yeah, so we continue to have what we call blue paper discussions at council in confidence.
What's blue paper mean?
It's confidential conversation. So we at council we get white paper and blue paper. Blue paper is stuff. So
there are conversations happening.
We had council meeting. It's on the agenda. It says TOC update and away we go. The province is very strict on this. I will tell you, I'm absolutely uncomfortable with it. I don't like that. I think there's a better way to do it. I think we'll have to wait until the first week of October before the floodgates sort of open on things. The general public will be aware and open. But yeah, I mean, it's it's not the way. We talk about openness and transparency, right?
Exactly.
Listen, there are always things that are sensitive.
Has this happened before in the town? Have you been involved with the situation?
No, not a TOC. So from my understanding, this is the first time outside of a transit station that a TOC has been proposed. We used to have MZOs, right? Municipal zoning orders, and it was kind of the same thing where they're looking to sort of sidestep the planning process and just get something done. So anyway, I think there's more to come on this, but the process, again, is important, right? If you get the process right. You can disagree with the outcome, but it's usually been all agreed on that, hey, we stick to the process, and that's how we're going to get. So this is a little outside the lines in terms of how we've dealt with things before.
And I think that's the thing, especially for the residents association. They're not looking to say, you can't do this. They just want to have the open conversation about and be involved. And I think where they kind of get into challenge was they went through this year of kind of, this process, and then to say, well, thanks for your thoughts, we're going to the TOC.
Well, and the residents associations have had a battle with the town over ROP. It was ROP review, right? And we struck a committee of the whole, and because we didn't like it, and the residents groups came back and worked with us for a year, and we were working, and we still are working towards an OP of our own. But how that's impacted by what the province decides to do, we're yet to find out. But that was a process, and the residents had a say in it, and that's how it should be. It takes a while, but unfortunately, that's how democracy works.
It's interesting when you look at Ward 3, and there's been certain towers that have been built, but not a lot of development as of late. Mm-hmm. But Bronte is growing like crazy, and you guys are experiencing not obviously what that plan's supposed to look like at Midtown, but you've had exponential growth as of late.
Yeah, we've got, listen, as I mentioned earlier, my mom said you don't go to Bronte. That is out the window now, right?
All bets are off. And especially when you're retiring or going into an old age home, right?
Well, it is, but it is. There's a great restaurant scene. I know you've had Doug Greco on before. He's done magnificent things there. There's the Bronte Tavern as well has opened up. There's a whole dynamic there. We have events in the park, music, lake notes every Thursday night. So there's a lot going on, and that comes with change. But it's generational change, right? These buildings are dilapidated. Some of them, the old Bronte Village Mall was just, you could shoot a cannon through it. The old West End Social and the Coach and Four pub, that plaza was all needed to be redone, but it's all happening at the same time, right? And that's what gives some frustration to residents. But my council colleague and I, Jonathan, had a meeting with over 200 residents showed up and just said, hey, we understand the frustrations. We've got a website. We're doing communication. Sign up for the list, and we'll all get through this together.
Yeah. Let me ask you, were you involved, when they took down the Bronte Village Mall and the proposal and the kind of change of site there? Were you involved? Were you on council at that time?
So it was a court settlement. It started in 2008, was finalized in 2012, and then it flipped hands. So Sobeys, Crombie REIT, finally purchased it and moved ahead with the development. And I was there the day the cranes came in and took the Bronte Village Mall sign off, and they tore down the fences. And
didn't Doug walk at all the fire hall people?
We did.
Across?
We were there for the last night. Yeah, it was amazing.
Cool
so when he opened the new fire hall, everybody was there at the old fire hall, the old chaps, and about 150 of us got up and walked over to the street, and they had the new fire. It was amazing. It was just, it's a real sense of community there. So yeah, it's been a great time, and seeing the transition and what's to come is inspiring, but it's not without its hiccups for sure.
It's interesting, like we were saying when we were growing up, the Curse Street, Bronte, we don't go there. But now what I'm seeing, especially what Doug introduced me to, is the people of Bronte. They love Bronte. Like they almost don't even want to go downtown because they don't want downtown Oakville. They want to park. And Doug said, I would want to open a restaurant there. So there's obviously a real a draw and a lot of passion of your residents in that area.
Well, it is. And because I'm a councillor, it's one thing, but you recognize people, you see them all the time. I'm in there with my family having dinner at the fire hall, and somebody comes, hey, Sean, I noticed this and that. Yeah, no problem, Jim, I'll get it for you. Or, hey, so we're within our own sort of town. We're in the village of Bronte, and everybody sort of knows from the harbors, the boats are coming out, whether it's the fishing derby, the music, the festivals, the same guy who walks the trail and picks up the garbage. And, there's a lot of people out there who because it's a small, tight-knit community down there, but we are welcoming new people every day, and it's great to have new contributors to the area.
So, Sean, you've been in this position now for 10 years. Do you see your political career going further? Do you have kind of the want to do that, or what's the future look like?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
My big thing when I ran in 2014 was the Wycroft Bridge extension, and anybody who's driven down Bronte Road right now sees that bridge going over to where the Longos is, and that completion is going to be in 2026. And I've always said that's how long municipal politics can take. It can take you 10 years to get a bridge built, right?
Yeah.
But so that's going to come to fruition.
Greenbelt, can't go with the Greenbelt, right?
Yeah. So I love the community. I love taking care of Bronte residents. I'm doing a lot of work at the region of Halton with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative of protecting the Great Lakes, protecting our watershed. That's been a real focus of mine. And that work, making sure that we work with our U.S. partners so that they don't turn the faucets on and flood California with all our Lake Ontario water. So I'm focused on that right now, but I love Oakville, and I've always have, and Bronte and Oakville have a special place in my heart. And again, if there's something that comes up, that calls, happy to look into it. And, I've also got a lot of sense to look in the private sector. And I've done 10 years now. I'm in my mid 40s, and there's an expiry date for all of us, and some of us don't know when.
I wouldn't say mid 40s, but after 10 years,
in terms of public service, right?
Don't you double the amount of time? It feels like 20 years.
Maybe expiry date, maybe a best before date. So you can continue to drink the milk out of the fridge, but you should have probably thrown it out.
Got it.
So I'm cognizant of that, and I'm cognizant of the need for younger people to come up and get engaged, because we don't have enough young voices coming into politics at all levels.
Yeah.
And I think municipal politics is really important to learn how it works on the ground floor,
right,
in order to understand how you can impact that provincially and especially federally as well. So I think those angles are important to understand, and I would absolutely encourage anyone who wants to get involved at either the upper two levels, spend some time municipally, understand residents' needs, and understand how they are all impacted through a variety of levels. So.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I mean, in your time, if you were to look back at your 10 years, what are you most proud of?
Oh, it's absolutely the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at the time there was no funding.
It's a spectacle. When you go across the viaduct, you look up, that thing is unbelievable. It almost looks alien.
Well, and the way that it's going to unlock sort of southwestern Oakville, it's right now you can't cross that creek, right? And it's going to just fundamentally change the way we access Burlington and Oakville and people coming down to get on the GO station, and everything's there. So that's been great. I'm really proud of that. And
I should probably know this, but there's a cool architectural design to it. It's not like the rest of the bridges, right?
No, it's a span bridge. So they build it both this way, and then it'll just kiss in the middle.
That's right.
And connect. And it's amazing to see how it happens. So I'm going to try and get.
Is there kind of a completion date or expected?
Yeah, 2026. So still it's still a little bit of time. But the one thing that the region does really well is construction projects. You don't have to the green light. You don't have to wait about. It's not the LRT. It's not this. It's not that. It's when we get the money and we go. It's on time and it's on budget. So
I guess I shouldn't bring up the Burlington Burl Oak underpass then, right?
Listen, because who's in charge of that one? Yeah. Metrolinx, right?
Metrolinx, yeah. How did that happen? I don't understand, right?
Well, so if we get the region involved in some of these projects, and even the town projects, they tend to go.
Does your era span out to that? Is Ward 1 out to Burl Oak?
Yeah, so Burl Oak, I share it with my council colleague in Burlington, Paul Sharman. So because Burl Oak is half owned by Burlington and Oakville, so there's 3 groups involved. But the city of Burlington, town of Oakville, only go up to the railway tracks, and the railway tracks are Metrolinx, and Metrolinx is in charge of doing all construction in and around their tracks. So,
and this is obviously part of the Midtown issue is Metrolinx involvement in Industry Ontario or Industrial Ontario,
Infrastructure
Ontario.
Yeah, and it's
so there's so many different.
Well, you talk about when we are developing, and everyone wants to build houses. Housing without infrastructure is useless. If you don't have the community centers, you don't have the dog parks, you don't have the libraries, you don't have the railway tracks, you don't have the roadways. What are you doing? You're going to end up with a Liberty Village. And as much as I love going to TFC games and watching, you can't get in, you can't get out. You're landlocked in there, and we're heading that way on numerous fronts until we start understanding if you don't have schools there, you're asking people to get in the car and drive to places and drive in, and you're quadrupling your traffic.
Yeah, we just had former Mayor Ann Moble on it, and she said, I think that you have to start with the infrastructure plan, and you have to lay it out before you start to build.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's you've got property owners who want to build now; they don't want to wait for a plan. You've got other landowners who don't want to work with each other. You've got all these factors rolling into it because somebody's land has to be a park,
right,
and somebody's land has to be a road,
but it doesn't have the same value in the value.
Exactly,
right?
It doesn't. So that's why there's got to be partnerships and cost sharing and these sorts of things. And we'll cook in for but it has to be done holistically, because if it's not, you're going to end up piecemeal, and it's going to be a lot of trouble. Let
me ask you this one. So if you're looking at Bronte right now, or I guess I'll stick with Bronte, is there something you'd like to change? Do you have something you're looking to kind of change in that area? Yeah,
we're undergoing a streetscape plan right now. And we're redoing the Lakeshore Road and how we sort of. What is Bronte going to look like? The main street of Lakeshore. Right now, it is seen as a thoroughfare. It's how you get from downtown over to Burlington, and it doesn't have that feel.
Strip town.
The street feel. There aren't patios coming out to the roadway. There aren't nice trees and gardens and beds, and it's not a place you would want to stroll with your kids and sort of have an ice cream on Lakeshore. We've got that on Bronte Road, heading down to the lake.
Certainly,
it's amazing, right?
But that's what makes it unique and special.
It is,
right?
but even then on Bronte Road, we've got to expand because it's tight.
Man, if you want to kind of get down there on a Saturday, it's crazy.
I know, it's awesome, but it is so intense to watch, and how many people are walking on the boardwalk, having fun, hanging out, looking at the water, and I think we need more of that. We can extend that across Lakeshore.
So, I mean, we had Doug Greco on the show. He spoke very highly of you and your involvement, and so I mean, is that obviously critical to your position, the involvement of the current leaseholders or the current owners of the restaurants? That are you kind of always in communication with them?
Got to have partners.
Yep.
I mean, we don't do this on our own, and if you start fighting, we get nowhere, and that includes the development community. There's a lot of councillors and across all of the GTHA, or the developers, this and that, and you need partners, and they've got the capital. They want to invest in your area, or they can go invest somewhere else, right? And we need to have partners. We need to sit down and work out plans together. They're redeveloping the streetscape right now with all of these developments. So what does that look like, and how can you help us, and how can we work with that?
Is it kind of like the open forum right now? They're asking for the kind of the public's advice.
Yes. So we're having on Kerr Street and Bronte. We're doing a
Kerr Street as well.
Study, to see what does it look like, what does the flow look like. So we're going through that right now, and I'm excited to see.
And coming out of that, are there like architecture, or are there people that come out with real plans, or is people just coming up saying, "I'd like to see this"?
No, there's so we get public input, but architects are leading it, and engineers and design engineers and urban design people, and they will take that information and sort of make it look something that's true. So when a building comes and redevelops, and they say, "Okay, how do you want us to redo the municipal element of it?" We go, "Here's a plan right here. You do your part now."
Yeah.
And they go, "Okay, perfect." So that makes it easy.
So Sean, I know you have this involvement with the Great Lakes Water Association. Tell us more about that, and what is that?
Yeah, so because of where my ward is down on the water since 2015, I've been representing the region of Halton on the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities initiatives. It's 240 mayors and elected officials in the U.S. and Canada who are trying to do everything we can to influence other levels of government to protect our water and our watershed. So we work with our partners in Quebec as well from St. Lawrence, our partners on the south side of Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Lake Michigan as well, and we're advocating all things water. So it's really important with the flooding that we've had, with shoreline erosion, invasive species as well. I don't know if you seen those videos with the flying carp coming up the Mississippi.
Crazy. Yeah,
it's pretty nuts. So we're working really hard to try and ensure that the province and the federal government knows that it's an issue and invest in that issue. And the federal government came out with $300 million Canada Water Agency fund as well, which is going to help sort of support that. We're looking at how do we optimize our economy on the water. We heard of the province's announcement, let's put a tunnel under the 401 and move trucks around. We're looking at a ferry going from St. Catharines to Toronto up to 30 times a day. So Mayor Cisco and St. Catharines, and how do we use our waterways more effectively? How can we transport things across the water, right? It's there for us, and how do we protect it as well? So our partners in the south are very curious about what's going to happen November 4th, and what are those impacts for the water and the watershed. So I've been proud and honored to represent the region on that agency and making sure that our voice is at the table when it comes to the Halton region and protecting water.
I was away at the time, and I remember it was sometime in July, and all of a sudden it's like TikTok, and I'm seeing people looking at the bridge or the dock floating down the 16-mile creek with the boats, and it wasn't to me like there was a ton of rain. It was a lot at one time, but that's pretty concerning that it could rise up almost 4 feet and do one of my friends is actually one of the harbor masters for the town in Bronte, and he explained those docks are chained with huge concrete blocks. It picked it all up, which I think is incredible. Yeah,
well, that one was a surge, so there was some logs and stuff that were holding it back, and when that finally broke, it came down, and it was, you think what a tsunami would be like. We saw a microcosm of how the water can just wash everything away.
See that dock just with all the boats attached to it going out into the lake.
Well, I was somewhere, and I got friends tagging me, hey, here's your good luck.
Yeah, I had Americans texting me, what's happening
and
up
the
there?
Boats are just slowly easing out into Lake Ontario. Listen, it's not something to laugh at. It's people's property and stuff, but no, we just had a regional report, 220 millimeters of rain in the span of 5 days, and it was on par for the 1954 Hurricane Hazel that hit.
Is that right?
With the amount of rain that we got, and we remember in 2017 when we had the floods, people were kayaking in the parking lot of the Bronte boat
remember that?
There was water everywhere. So this is consistent, and we have to look at our flooding issues. We have to work with the Insurance Board of Canada. We have to look with our federal partners. And
is that part of the Great Lakes? Is that part of what you're doing and looking at this?
Yeah, it spans into that, right?
Okay.
So we are advocating for that because that's what the municipalities on the water are concerned about, right?
Yeah.
mean, the lake isn't flooding in Milton, right?
No.
It's flooding down in our
Right,
areas.
exactly.
So we've got to figure out ways to work with our partners on that, and we're doing it. We're getting there, but municipal politics and provincial and federal can creep.
One of the challenges, I think, is some of the stuff that you try to push through with politics. It's not pretty. It's not something you're going to run on, right? But they're so important, like these infrastructure issues and the flooding issues, right?
Well, it's like nobody's ever won with the campaign slogan, "Hey, I've got your water treatment plant coming in 10 years," right? I mean, that doesn't really fly that
They
well.
want the glamour, the bliss,
but I'll tell you, when I was in Calgary this summer and the water didn't work.
That's a reality check.
There's hell to pay, right? It's the brush and flush. It's not pretty, but you need it. And when you don't have it, there's hell to pay. So it's important. But yeah, it's not the sexiest of the time. Eh?
Sean, this brings us to the part of the show called the Robcast Rapid Ask. So, a couple questions for you. You're on death row. It's your last meal just by yourself. What's on the plate?
Lamb shank. Mashed potatoes, peas, and a nice demi-glaze.
Demi-glaze. No mint sauce or no mint sauce?
I like the vinegary mint sauce, not the jelly one, right?
A little
tart.
Yeah, a little tartness to it. If you had the opportunity to sit down with someone, dead or alive, anyone in the world, for dinner and pick their mind, who would that person be?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I know.
My dad.
Okay. What's something about you that most people don't know?
Something about me. Well, I'm a big softie. I am an absolute softie, even though I was a former amateur boxer. It's the juxtaposition.
Do you still train? Do you still?
I don't. I wish I had time to, but I ran boxing for the Pan Am Games in 2015. So I was the organizer for that. 3 years, lived in Oshawa for 3.5 weeks, putting on the boxing there. So that was that. I still have an involvement. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, busy political life. Is there one place in the world that you kind of have pinned on the map? Like, we're going to take a vacation there with the family.
So I lived in Ireland. Got to take my kids back to Ireland.
Right.
That's that one. But for me personally, myself, I would love to go to Kashmir.
Kashmir?
Yeah, in between India and Pakistan, some of the most beautiful mountains. One of the places you just can't go, but it is. I think that would be a great place to go.
Sean, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Please stay tuned for another episode of the Robcast.
The Robcast is brought to you by Oakville's own Fisher Private Wealth Management of RBC Dominion Securities and Fraser Associates of RBC Private Banking.